Hi friends, and welcome to my 324 time capsule for all like 4 people who ever watch these. So this was playing the assassin in Necropolis League, and so I ended up having a lot of fun. Got through pretty much everything you could really want to do with a Magic Find character. Found myself some mirror shards, found myself a set of doctors that I promptly sold, found myself a bunch of cards out of Defiled Cathedral. So all in all, not too terrible. It was a fun league. It was a pretty intense league though. So that there was just sort of a lot of different mechanics that stacked on each other to create a really weird economy. People could generate a lot of unique items through specific ways. They introduced something called Tier 17 maps that were basically like harder maps that were way more lucrative. And we have multiple Atlas trees now, so lots of fun there. So what I'm going to do, because this is sort of a mapping focused build, I'm actually going to start with a map instead of just going and killing Sirus like we usually do. And then we'll sort of go from there. So you can see right now I have set up my setup that was designed to generate maps. So another thing that they did this patch that was really cool was they got rid of sextants entirely and replaced them with scarabs that have sort of interesting effects. So you can see here, like, I've got a bunch of additional strong boxes. Maps drop corrupted, which, like, if you remember, this used to be a sextant effect. And then, like, additional maps and duplication of maps. So basically, like, the way that this particular Atlas tree is set up and this you know, set of scarabs is set up, right? We look at all of this, like, we get a bunch of strong boxes, we get a bunch of monsters on the map through various mechanics, you know, like we've got just influence, we've got, these are sort of the Necropolis nodes, which I guess I'll talk about as I'm running through. Oops, I forgot to go on D&D. Sorry about that. But anyways, yeah. So this is a good league overall. And so basically, like, the sort of strategy was I would run a map to generate a whole host of corrupted 6 mod maps. And then I would filter out those 6 mod maps to find something that was very high quant and very sort of juicy, as it were, like this one here. And then we would switch over to a tree that is based around the Harbingers. So you can see here we've got Delirium, Harbingers, all of that jazz. And then so basically just, we are dumping as many monsters on the map as we possibly can. And then we run through and murder everything on the map with extreme prejudice. And so, like, this is another one of those, like, super interesting things actually that they did this league. And you can see I've been very focused. Like, I have all of these free crafts that I just haven't used because I've been so focused on these 2 mechanics. They have scarabs that have sort of limits in terms of, like, total number of quantity, but you can have more than one of them, right? So we're getting 300% increased quantity of divination cards out of this map instead of 150 because I've got that. So let's kick it off, and then I'll talk about sort of the mapping gear and the mapping gear that I use, and then we can talk about the gear I use when I'm actually trying to kill stuff. So this is the Lantern of Arimor. It's part of the Necropolis League mechanic. We got lucky here actually. So basically these are sort of modifiers on the number of things that are happening, and then you can sort of replace the effect of these creatures with something different, right? So I can say, okay, like, we're going to make this drop scarabs now, and you know, you could breach mechanic, you could splinters, sulfites, like expedition artifacts. You can turn the monsters into other things. So this is really useful if you have, like, a particularly threatening monster. This mechanic got used a lot on T17s. And you also see there's sort of, like, difficulty mods, right? Like, so this has less pack size, but this is like a 4-star difficulty, 3-star difficulty, all that jazz. And so like you as a player sort of get to choose like, okay, like I know how much of my map is going to be this particular type of monster, and then make a decision of like, oh, what am I going to put on this, right? So like if I were doing something that was, you know, if I were feeling saucy, I could put something on here that was like, okay, like all of these turn into monsters that drop chaos orbs, right? Like there's a very specific mod that's like causes all of them to generate like hundreds upon hundreds of chaos orbs. It's actually miserable to play, ironically, because you click so much and have to loot so many things that, you know, like, yes, you pull like 1500 chaos out of a map if you put it on all of the creatures, but you had to loot it all. You had to loot 1500 chaos. You had to click 1500 times, and so that ends up being a little on the annoying side. So let's pop into the map itself, and who knows, maybe I'll finish that set of 7 Years Bad Luck, or get something else juicy. So this character is a Blade Vortex assassin. Like this is a pretty common build. This is something that a lot of people have done for MF for leagues upon leagues. So I'm not really innovating here, but the basic idea is you have you scale Blade Vortex and Vol Blade Vortex, and so you just have sort of an area of death around yourself that you're like super happy about, and you're just like running around, and then everything else about the character is designed to be sort of as like minimal as possible to actually get magic flank here. So you basically want just enough power, okay, right, and you just enough power that you can survive the map that you're doing and get loot out of it, and then everything else you're doing, you just, you know, you're trying to just run through as fast as possible. So it's basically sort of a pop delivery system in a lot of ways. Not going to complain about that. But this league in particular, because of sort of the quant and the pack size and various other mechanics like ghosts and things like that. Oh, I'm using the wrong... Whoops. Oh well. So normally I would be using Eater of Worlds instead of Searing Exarch for this. So no lucky divine altar for the content. This is how you know I'm doing it live. But basically we are doing Blade Vortex. We are converting our character to sort of cold damage. I think I have 99% conversion because I have like one bad roll on my gloves. And so we freeze things very, very often, and then anytime we kill something we get a big old pop that is about 30% of the monster's maximum HP, which means that they chain together very effectively. It's a lot of fun. So that just dropped there was a corpse. So one of the other sort of the other half of the Necropolis mechanic was a very sort of high-end crafting mechanic, specifically focused around the idea of you have corpses that have specific effects. So like that one was like minion modifiers, right? And so they acted sort of like fossils in that way, where you would put all these corpses in the graveyard in sort of a specific configuration because they did some really interesting things with proximity modifiers. Like the corpse, you get a corpse that's like the corpse next to this one has 500% increased effect, right? Or like this corpse will not consume when you activate the graveyard and use it to make an item. And so the idea here was it's sort of like an incremental piece of an item that you're getting. And so you would put like 80, 90, 100 corpses in the graveyard and use all of them to create a single item that was really something that you wanted, right? And so this one, for example, right, like we've got +1 maximum power charge on this item. Like, maximum power charge is not a suffix that you've been able to get before, right? It's been like a corrupted implicit, it's been accessible through various other means, but there's never been just like, hey, like you can get this as a suffix. So there were like unique things that you had to pull out of the graveyard that were haunted modifiers. And that was sort of how you pulled like value out there. It was very finicky. The graveyard crafting, I should have set one up. Damn, I'm an idiot. Oh well. So graveyard crafting was very much this thing where it was just like, oh, okay, like you've gotta work and work and work and work, and you wanted very specific things, and you had to sort of use a calculator and be like, okay, like I need 20 chaos corpses, and I need 10 cold resistance corpses, and I need 30 less fire corpses, or whatever. Like, you know, that's, the numbers are off there. It's been a while, but that's sort of the gist of what you had to do. And then you would press the button and get like 1 to 2 items, and you just sort of had to hope that those were the right items. And so here you can sort of see the scarabs that are dropping, like, you know, you have Scarab of Wisps, which adds essentially the Ghost's Affliction mechanic to the League, you know, a Cardo of Duplication, which was that one that causes maps to duplicate when they drop. But in general, the way that this League ended up playing out is that you used scarabs that were sort of unified thematically and focused on one thing, right? So the strategy that I'm using is actually a little bit weird because we are... Whoop, oh, I'm an idiot and stood in a delirium explosion. My bad. So that is one thing with this build, is that, you know, because we are sort of cutting down a little bit on survivability, because we are trying, you know, we have lots and lots and lots of items that are focused purely on magic finding. So that occasionally happens where you just, you know, you go in and you pop, and that's just sort of a fact of life. I will be when I go to kill the bosses. Oh, not a mage button. I'll be using a slightly tankier version of my... Oh god. Okay, I probably should not have clicked the minus chaos res. That's my bad. But you can see again, like, this character stacks a bunch of auras. And is generally just sort of like you're zipping along, having a good old time. The fact that I'm still popping with oh, I was almost done with the map too. How humiliating. Shameful. Simply shameful. Anything interesting here? No. No loot. I guess an enlightened... I would not complain about an enlightened card in the course of ordinary gameplay. So, when I'm less rusty and not distracted by talking to people and instead standing in the fire, these maps took about 3 minutes, typically. Because, you know, you're a headhunter build, so it sort of varies a lot. Let's see if the Venters is any good. Well, pity about the minus res on the 2, but 39% rarity, 4% quant. Neat. Not as good as mine, though. Yeah, so that is the mapping sort of showcase, right? Just like run around, things blow up. It's a lot of fun. So let us do what is customary and go do a Sirus. So this is where I talk about how the build has somewhat... I sort of have developed a slightly modular gear, because sometimes I'm sort of taking on challenges that are significantly harder, right? So this hat is, aside from the power charges, very much for magic fight, right? You know, it's frankly not very good outside of the fact that it has a shed load of rarity on it, and then the power charge mod. But that's enough to use it sort of for the day-to-day, like running through a map and blowing things up, and if I'm not distracted and standing in fire, I don't die. But here, you know, I have a much nicer hat, and you can see I even have the gems preloaded because of the same sort of desire, right? That has the same power charge mod, but now you see it's fractured, you know, cannot be blinded, right? And so this was one that I made myself in the graveyard, and sadly got stuck with the power charge mod. But here we're you know, getting shock immune on the character, so we don't have to use it on the flask. Where's my diamond flask? Oh well, whatever. Doesn't really matter. And then, you know, we have some more damage conversion. Then we have here, we have quant and Phys conversion along with a bunch of max life. But we can swap that out for a Defiance of Destiny. And Defiance of Destiny makes it any sort of smallish hit do... It essentially just sort of reduces the damage almost entirely, right? It's an incredibly overpowered item. It's really cool. Definitely, if you haven't gotten to play with this item, it is absolutely amazing. Just certified banger. And then we can put on real boots instead of my gold worms. So we will then be able to run out of the fire faster and generally be good. So this build is not really a bossing build. So I'm almost certainly going to die a couple times to Sirus because, you know, I'm on stand and fire and do silly things. But also just like what it is designed for is run through a map, explosions chain across to each other and kill everything. Like, it still has reasonable defenses, but, you know, I'm only like a 3200 HP. Not Chaos Res isn't maxed, even with some nice pieces of gear. We're leaning into evasion, but again, only like 62%. So, you know, we don't have determination at all. Definitely sort of this is very much a glass cannon, just go out there, have fun kind of build. But yeah, let's go kill Sirus, and we'll see how it goes. Spoilers. Yeah, we're probably gonna die at least once. But overall, I spent quite a chunk on this build over the course of the league. A lot of that was in their sort of the high demand uniques. So you saw the Venters that I had there, right? Like that Venters was very expensive. The bow, getting the base that has this explode mod, right? Like they do 10% of their max life as Phys damage, was very expensive. I guess, you know, the Clander's Touch was a little expensive. But I really tried hard to craft most of my gear this league. So this I crafted myself, this I crafted myself. And again, they're not like amazing items by any stretch of the imagination. This one I crafted myself. They're not amazing items, but they're solid. You know, this was another example of... This was actually a Necropolis craft where you can see I sort of like pushed. It has 35% movement speed. Like normally that's pretty hard to obtain with a bunch of other T1 modifiers, unless you're really lucky. So, all in all, it was sort of a fun experiment trying to focus on making instead of buying. Let's see how we do here. Oh no, the villagers! So you'll see I have an Arcanist brand here. That is just sort of putting down debuffs essentially. So it's got Assassin's Mark and Hydrosphere, and the Hydrosphere is sort of chill for all intents and purposes. So it's just a way to sort of create exposure on the character. It's not really all that important. You know, obviously Assassin's Mark helps. Oh, okay, you're gonna come down now. But yeah, we just sort of periodically, we keep our Blade Vortex stacks at full, we stand next to whatever we're fighting. We wait for Enduring Cry to heal ourselves because we're dying to a degen. That's one other thing you'll see my character just sort of periodically shouting without any input from me. That is actually, there's a new gem that was introduced in this patch to replace our left click, which used to be a thing, right? Is like you used to just be able to put instant cast spells on your left click. They got rid of the ability to do that in 3.24, and instead introduced a gem called Automation, which just says like periodically, I'm gonna cast this thing. So there's automation and there's cast to arms, or call to arms rather. Cast to arms. Okay, I guess he didn't want to. Whoops! Don't stand in fire. And it will, anyways, it will like periodically cast a war cry. You gonna come down now? What is going on with him? Is he not? Okay, there we go. Well, so anyways, like basically it's just like it periodically casts the spell, and that's the sum total of what it's doing. Okay, well, I guess we're gonna do it live, friends. We're gonna go over here. Like normally I go up on the stairs, if you remember most times, but he goes around the arena like this. So we will get him to start thinking, and then hopefully he'll come over and chat with us. But yeah, so anyways, you have oh, that's Herald of Ash. Where is it? Call to Arms. So it basically like repeatedly casts my war cry, and in my case it's casting Enduring Cry because it's just sort of sustain and free endurance charges if something is close by. And then I have automation for phase run. So that's why my character is sort of periodically turning translucent, because about half the time I have elusive, which is really nice. It just sort of like lets me clip through. Where are you, buddy? Oh, there you are. He's alive! Not for long, hopefully. Come on, get your assassins.
Feel the thrill of the everlasting fire.
Oh god, that's a lot of debuff stacks. But you can see here how good Defiance of Destiny is, right? Like, I just face tanked that entire laser. And it... Oh, hey! Not gonna complain about that. And I healed up because it's so good, right? Like, so just, like, Defiance of Destiny is just an absolutely busted item. Got some bases, but... And then, oh, hey, that's the belt. So this filter is very aggressive because you know, like, those maps that I do generate a lot of loot, and as a result of that, you really only want to see a little bit of it. So yeah, all in all, not gonna complain about. Get a good roll. Nah, okay roll. Certainly not gonna spit on an extra Awakener's Orb going to standard. But yeah, you can see lots and lots and lots of corpses. Oh, I should talk about tier 17s and back to basics. I'm not going to do one because it would just be a whole chain set of deaths. But we can at least talk about them. So this particular, and this is getting deleted next patch, but basically, like, the idea behind this version of the Atlas tree that we use is basically just like every node that could possibly increase the chance of scarabs, you get, right? You hide all of the league mechanics and increase sort of the chances of stuff that can show up here. And then you see this line that says extra content cannot appear in your maps. But that doesn't apply to the tier 17 modifiers. So tier 17 maps are maps that have these sort of unique modifiers. So this one, for example, like, we have additional rare monsters. Rare monsters have 2 additional modifiers, which we shouldn't roll over even for posterity. Let's grab a random one here. So this one is rare monsters are shaper touched. So this is actually another really good one. But then it's paired with all magic and normal monsters in the area have Union of Souls, which means by the end of the map, you have made everything just infinitely more tanky, right? And you know, we got lucky here. Players have -2 to the maximum number of totems. I don't use totems, it doesn't matter. So all in all, that's the kind of thing that you can do. And so you would run this in conjunction with Back to Basics and a bunch of, if you look at the tree, like there's a bunch of map effect on it, right? And so you'd run that and get all of those modifiers significantly magnified and just get ludicrous amounts of scarabs, some of which are incredibly valuable. So that was sort of how you extracted value out of tier 17s. But then other people had ways of using the Lantern of Arimor in conjunction with monsters called meat sacks that can condense entire packs of monsters down into a single monster, and then increasing the rarity and the quantity of items that are dropped by that monster massively. So that was sort of a strategy that developed a lot. Let's go run a delve node. So I didn't delve as far as I usually do this league. I only got to like 400-ish, but all in all, it was fun. And the build just sort of, by its nature, you know, you're running from point A to point B. Delve, you're running from point A to point B. It sort of plays nicely in that regard. And you can see sort of things just like popping. Whoop. Okay. As I go the wrong way. This is what happens when I'm yapping. You gotta have respect for people who can do this for a living and stream and chat and hardcore. It's like, I don't know how they do it. Oh hey, Devourers. But yeah, so it's very, very much like a Pretty Lights show kind of build. Things just pop around. They are getting rid of item quantity in the next patch, so sort of this build is going to look pretty different because you won't be using all of that magic find gear in the next patch. And so you can see like a lot of stuff actually dropped, but it's all hidden by my loot filter because I've got the very strict loot filter on. So let's go over the gear here. Dump all of this in a random tab. How many enlightens do I have? Obviously not a full stack. Okay, I did have all of them in sort of dash. This is the other thing that you can do. Like if you're feeling spicy, you can run a divination distillate. It's annoying, frankly. Like that's most of the reason why I didn't do it. It's so annoying. It's the most tilting thing on the planet to just be like constant like uptime. I've got to think about this. Like having automated flasks is one of the really nice things about modern PoE. Oh, side note. Alesmith non-alcoholic. They make Speedway Stout now. It's fantastic. If you are a craft beer nerd who, you know, isn't supposed to be drinking quite as much, highly recommend checking that out. That and Best Day Brewing does a bunch of good non-alcoholic stuff. Free plug. So going over the items on the character, and then I'll sort of go over the skills. So this is my explode bow. You can see we're really heavily trying to scale area of effect, so we're using the quality as area of effect rather than the quality as elemental damage. And then we want to scale gem level. And so that's what, you know, you see the +1 level of socketed gems, socketed support gems. And then we have a bunch of gems that are supporting our blade vortex. So we get a level 29 blade vortex. If I had better gear, this would be a level 30. But basically just we use all of this juice. Like you can get an awakened in power that increases at an additional level, right? Like this is a level 4 empower that is then getting 3 levels from the item, so it's 7, and then it modifies all of the other gems. But yeah, so basically just we're increasing our damage, we're decreasing our mana cost, increasing the chance to crit. Like it's pretty standard support stuff. This makes it ignore cold damage, and we're converting almost all of our damage. It's like 99% if I remember correctly. Yeah, like we're converting 99% of our damage to cold damage. So pretty much everything we are doing is cold damage. So that's the item itself. And then we have this is our magic find hat, right? We need mana reservation efficiency to fit stuff, damage per power charge, because when we're fighting stuff we have 8 power charges. And you know, you can see we're scaling max power charges on this item, as well as on the tree because we're an assassin. And then we just want phase run automation, just so that we can run around and be cozy. And then we just, precision is a nice little chunk of crit chance. That's really all it is. Again, here we're leaning into the sort of physical conversion theme. So Blade Vortex does physical damage. We're saying, hey, okay, look, let's take all of that and ramp up those bonuses. So we have physical damage as extra chaos, and then fire and cold. So basically just sort of every point of physical damage we get a bunch of extra elemental damage, all of which is valuable. And then just sort of dex to fit gear, crit multi, and crit chance. This neck, it's not like the GG neck, which is crit multi, instead of the Phys is cold, but it's still really nice. But the really sort of wonderful thing about this is the 20% increased quantity of items found. So player quant is, you can sort of think of it as all of the player quant that you're getting makes each monster count as like an additional chunk of another monster, right? So this is saying essentially, I'm vastly simplifying here because there's sort of a complicated formula, but each monster counts as 1.2 monsters when I kill them. And when, you know, you kill 3 million monsters in a given league, that kind of incremental advantage adds up very quickly. But anyways, these are sort of amulets that come out of Heist, and they have the cool property of having sort of different rules for their modifiers. We used this on our ward loop build a couple, 2 or 3 leagues ago now, to get a bunch of suffixes. Here, you know, we're using it to get additional prefixes with stronger magnitudes. The chest, this is another item that I'm pretty proud of. You know, it's all rote. Like this is not like a hard item to craft by any stretch of the imagination, but doing it myself was fun, right? So we're scaling Val gems because again we're using Val Blade Vortex, and then we have increased area of effect and increased effect of auras because we have a bunch of auras on our character, and these are both elevated mods, which means you had to get 2 mods of the given effect and then use an Awakener's orb to flip a coin and say, hey, okay, one of these mods is going to be elevated, one of these mods is going to be deleted. So you basically, like, you craft, you get elevated aura effect, you get elevated area of effect damage on a different item, and then you mash the 2 items together to get this base, and then you just sort of cross your fingers and pray that the rest of the mods are decent. And that's why it just has like a random tier 6 strength roll on there, because yeah, you take what you can get there. I was happy about the fact that it had life at all. So that was fun. We've got a Calendar's Touch, and we're using a Venter's Gamble. So this was an item that I think probably like a third of the currency I made over the course of the league went into increasingly better Venter's Gambles. But the range on all of these effects is incredibly wide. You can see it goes from negative 25% to 50%. So getting something that is perfect quantity, relatively high rarity, and then has positive values at all in the others, let alone decent values like you see here, is statistically unlikely and very expensive. So this was a significant outlay over the course, but I just sort of incrementally improved it, right? Like I started with one that was like, I think 6% increased quant and gradually crept up the chain. But this is in conjunction with Calendar's Touch, which doubles it, where like most of my resistances are coming from. Just all around very nice. Then we have our conversion gloves. So this is where a lot of the actual conversion is happening on the gear. Oh, and so I should talk about the auras. So this chest is where all my auras live. We've got Hatred, that's being scaled, Herald of Ash, Grace, which is our defensive. Then we have an Enlightened to make sure that it fits. Zealotry, so we are creating consecrated ground anytime we're fighting stuff, and getting a bunch of additional crit chance. And finally, Herald of Purity, which scales our physical damage some. So that's what we got in there. And then in our gloves, we've got Call to Arms, Enduring Cry, so I talked about that a bunch. That's just the automated right there. And then just castable damage taken steel skin. We're getting endurance charges from Enduring Cry, so that does that. But honestly, like, it's sort of a fig leaf as far as the defensive option is concerned. Like, it maybe saves me like one time in 100 or whatever. Usually when I die because I did something stupid and I just pop. So anyways, these gloves are all about conversion, but you'll notice that they have the temple mod, right? Of Puhuarte, increased damage against chilled enemies, and so we really want to maximize as much damage as we can get out of these. And so we wanted the chaos resist, we want the cold resist, and so I've farmed these up and then sort of did the prefixes using betrayal to get the chosen modifier here that converts Phys to cold. And that combined with the eater mod means that we have, you can see I have 34 instead of 35%, because I didn't want to mess with the divines on the other things because of the wide range on the temple mod. But we convert over to cold damage, which means we are then scaling with hatred, and it's just in general a very advantageous damage type. And then we use the freezes spread to other enemies, such that, again, like the whole concept of this build is we have Blade Vortex on, we touch a monster in a pack, the monster dies, and it ripples through the entire pack and murders them instantly. Then we have Headhunter. So Headhunters this league are, I think, like down to like 5 divines or something silly like that. Because of the way that the mechanics of this league worked, tier 0 uniques are incredibly cheap. You can play this build with Mage Blood. It's honestly probably better with Mage Blood, but I have specifically held off. I've been playing one Ascendancy every league. I've specifically held off on a Headhunter character until this league, and so this is sort of how we get a lot of our power in a map, is we just murder a bunch of rare monsters, and then we have a ton of energy shield, extra health, we're doing a bunch more damage, and we can benefit from basically every kind of damage mod because we were doing Phys conversion, and so we are doing physical damage and then converting it into elemental damage. So all of the different damage mods are something that we get value out of. Just generally very fun item. That you can get a buff called Shroud Walker that's super annoying, but that's like the only downside really. So I was very worried because so much of the sort of power of the character is in the Headhunter. I was very worried that it wouldn't be fun to continue to build the rest of the character, but it's been surprisingly enjoyable. Then we have a Goldworm. So this is, again, like, this is another one of those items that are designed to scale item quantity more than anything else. And this is actually one of the problems that they talk about in the 3.25 patch notes, where if you want to be someone who is increasing the quantity of items on the map, right, like, you have to have this, you have to have like Venter's Gamble, you have to have Goldworm, like some people use Biscos, but there's like a very small subset of items in a game that is incredibly rich and in just all about like finding different interesting items. You're looking at the same small subset, and so I think that's all in all, like, I very much understand the reasoning, like, and you won't get to build characters like at least in this form like this in the future, but it's something that you build it. So let's go over the tree, and then I'll stop yapping and get out of here for you. So this is a reasonable balance, honestly, of cluster and non-cluster stuff. So we're an assassin. So I'll go over these. This is, again, just like whenever you crit, my character crits almost all of the time. You get elusive, and so you're just taking a little less damage. You're faster. You're harder to hit. Then we're getting the power charge nodes in Assassin. So When you crit, you get power charges, increases the total cap on power charges, power charge duration, all of that. And power charges are just sort of critical strike chance, more or less. And then there's other effects, like, you know, as you saw, the implicit on my helm was increased damage per power charge. And then ambush and assassinate. This one is really nice. And so some people will get rid of Mistwalker and take opportunistic instead. The character has enough damage for what it wants to do, and elusive is really nice. That's why I have it. But this one is just a whole bunch of free critical strike multi and crit strike chance against things that you're fighting. So you run into a pack, you're most likely to crit at the beginning, and then you're likely to sort of crit at the end. Just in general, assassin is very much a damaged focus ascendancy. You can either go power charges or you can go poison. The character started out as poison and then converted over. So you can see tattoos are back through the Necropolis stuff. Tattoos are really nice. We're using them to fix some resistance problems. But basically, you just sort of path out on stats, and then we're going to get lots and lots of sockets. So we're using like Storm Shroud to avoid ailments and ailment related problems. And then we're getting invert resistances here. You know, we're just, again, scaling cold damage. We're scaling basically things that scale crit, things that scale elemental damage and subcapacity, and then things that let us fit our auras or have increased aura effect. So we have a couple clusters. So this is our elemental one. We can go over, but basically what we're trying to do here is this one in particular is just, okay, you get additional elemental damage, you get some mana regen, all of that. But Doriani's lesson is the valuable thing on this cluster, which is we get leech. And because we are converting away from Phys, right, like regular leech is just not going to be working. Then we have a bunch of AoE clusters, and so this is where we're getting most of our area of effect. So this would be much smaller if I didn't have these clusters. And just sort of getting max AoE. There are, so vast power is capped, but we get like enough of them because we have 8 power charges, so we're getting like 24% area of effect per instance of vast power. So we have a couple vast powers, and then assert dominances, which are just sort of like what increases your area of effect. Like you saw as I was running through the map, my area of effect got way bigger when I was killing stuff. That's why, right? And then we have Flesh Flame. We're getting Polymath. So each of these reservation, like all of these special nodes are increasing my Polymath effect. Let's see if it does it actually. Oh no, it doesn't. It doesn't show up there. But anyways, yeah. That's a bummer. I didn't realize that didn't actually show in game. What it was. But anyways, power charge. We got a Watcher's Eye that is solid. This is again, like, it's not spectacular or anything. Cold Pen is very valuable. Cold damage. Ideally you would want the one that is based around crit, and then I just have movement speed while I have grace, because that's nice. But there's a bunch of options that you can go for the other stuff. You just want the hatred. Cold Pen is the main thing that you are interested in with the Watcher's Eye for this build. Some miscellaneous life nodes, and then this is our Phys cluster. So this one, Overwhelm, is very valuable, and it just 35% increased Phys is like a very good big number. Double damage, always nice. See another AoE cluster here, the same thing. Here we're using Shock Avoid. This is in conjunction with our Storm Shroud. So this is where we're getting other 40% of our shock. Like if you remember, when I put on my nicer hat, my nicer hat had 60% Shock Avoid. So that gets us to 100% Shock Avoid, which then means 100% ailment immunity. Then this one, so this is sort of how we're fitting our auras. We have the mana reservation, we have the 35% effect here, and then Sublime Form, which means Grace is half off. Gets us what we need. go down here, get some spell suppression. So we're converting over again, like we're power charge stacking, and then we're using a Militant Faith to get power charges and more damage per power charge. And I don't have any good like conversion notables, but this gives us area damage. It's like, it's solid. It's nothing spectacular, right? Like this is gear that anyone could put together. And then we're taking advantage of the fact that our gear has lots of evasion to get extra free suppression. We're using Mage Bane to convert that dex that you saw on the bow that I'm using mostly to get around like the fact that I have gems that have very high dex requirements. And then skill effecturation, this is mostly for sanity, because this is a self buff that decays fairly rapidly. You really want skill duration just so that you're not like constantly mashing. Yeah, all in all, reasonably fun league. I guess we can go. So these are sort of our all flames. They can do various things. We can like go to the graveyard and look at that real quick. You can tell, like, I really did not. I made a few items out of the graveyard, like those boots probably being like the nicest one, and then the power charge hat. Let's see, like modifier there. So we can plant a corpse. So we'll put a corpse in. It's like, oh, okay, we've got minion modifiers, and so you can see this fills in. And then we have the option to craft. And so this will say, okay, now what do you want to make, right? And so we can make a helmet, and we pick our base. And this is the only modifier on right now. And we're like, okay, well, like maybe we want a little more, right? Like, well, let's add that life in. And let's add that fire in. And so now this item, because these corpses are all connected, now when we roll the dice of what's on the item, we are going to be biased towards fire, life, minion, etc. And then if we go to the stash and we're like, okay, like we want +1 explicit modifier, right? Like, so let's bury a couple of the explicit modifier corpses. That's going to ensure the item has five different modifiers in the item, right? So if we look at this, now we're going to get something different because we did that. And then you can repeat that, like corpses, we could randomize the outcomes of the corpses nearby. We could increase the amount of caster modifiers that showed up. There are decreased corpses, I believe. Oh, it's less, I think. Yeah, so like, what the hell? Here's one of the special corpses. Haunted. So you have like haunted by these, and you can build like specific unique items if you pick like all of the Lavalia's family or all the Gratis family or whatever. And so modifier tier rating, you can increase the quality of the item. So this means like now it's like slightly higher chance to roll something good when I press the craft button. And then you just hit craft. Now we'll make a pair of gloves. We do a cool ritual. And I thought the ceremony of this was really cool. Like the voice actor really nailed it. He did a good job there. And we get a pair of gloves, right? And so it's actually, as far as gloves that were just like randomly yeeted go, like T1 evasion, T1 hybrid life, T2 chaos res, T1 attack speed. Like, someone might want those early league, right? But you can sort of see the power of, I bias towards fire resist, I bias towards life. Those mods both showed up on the item. And then the rest of it was random roll. And because we had +2 explicit modifiers, we ended up with a 6 mod item. So yeah, all in all, Necropolis League, I had a lot of fun with it. I think it was mostly because I made my own fun. The Scarab revamp was super cool. That was really neat. The assassin build, just like sort of running around and watching the screen blow up and pretty lights happen, was a lot of fun. I made a lot of currency off of divination cards before the market sort of cratered, so that was really cool. You know, fracturing shards, etc. I guess I sold the mirror shard to get something nice. Yeah, all in all, see y'all in 325.